Star Wars A New Hope Episode 4 is the next movie in the line that we are going to take a deep dive look into. And this is actually the movie that kick-started the Star Wars franchise. So yes, George Lucas actually started with Episode 4. This was originally called Star Wars. And he made the original trilogy and then went back and made the prequels leading into this particular movie. So this movie is 45 years old. It is an old movie, but does it stand the test of time? That's what we're going to look into. We're going to take a deeper dive and a deeper look at the Star Wars A New Hope. So let me know in the comments below, what did you guys think of this movie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Smash it down there. I want to hear your thoughts. Smash that like button for me and click subscribe as well. And let's take a deep dive look into A New Hope. So A New Hope, the fourth movie in the actual chronological order, that the episodic order, but it is actually the original and the first movie in the Star Wars franchise. Now, George Lucas, he originally wanted, like, how crazy is this? He originally wanted the Flash Gordon, right, so he could make Flash Gordon and really dive into that universe, but he could never get it. So he decided to create his own based upon that. And this is what he created. He created Star Wars. No one wanted to fund this project or anything like that. So George Lucas took it upon himself to do it. And now, 45 years later, look where the Star Wars franchise is now. We've got 9 episodic movies of the Skywalker saga. We've got 2 movies like Solo, Rogue One. We have now got series after series after series coming out as well. So, I mean, it's been an absolute journey. And to think that this was almost not created is just kind of a scary thought, because imagine a world without Star Wars. Like, that's just, I couldn't even imagine that. So this is the first one. This was my introduction to Star Wars as well. I was born in the early 90s, so I never had the prequels until I was like older. So this was my introduction. This was where I was introduced to Star Wars, was A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. And I remember watching this movie when I was a kid and just being in awe of it. Like, this was just something that my dad would always put on constantly. Like, he'd always put on New Hope, and then we'd watch Empire, and then we'd watch Return. So these next 3 movies that we're going to look at are ones that are major staples for me, and ones that I adore and have been around my whole entire life. Like, this was my introduction to cinema. This is what got me into movies, was this Star Wars franchise, and especially the original trilogies. And this one will always have a place in my heart no matter what, because this is really where I fell in love with the franchise, was this particular movie. Because this was the movie that created the heroes that I would come to love and that I would look up to moving forward with my life as I'm growing up to a kid. These were the heroes that I always wanted to be. These were the heroes where you would buy those lightsabers. You'd go out and you'd play with your brother and sister and that. And you'd have lightsaber fights. You would pretend there were stormtroopers. Like, that's what this movie did back then when I was a kid. Like, it clicked into my imagination and just made me just imagine I was in the Star Wars universe. Like, this was the movie that made me want to live in there and made me go outside and pretend I was always in the Star Wars universe, fighting stormtroopers, fighting Darth Vader, fighting whoever. Like, that's what this movie does. And when we take a deeper look at this movie, this is where we find out these characters that we're going to love. And it all starts with the Darth Vader moment where he gets into the rebellion ship, and he's after the what are they called, the Death Star plans. He's after them, and we obviously see our 2 favorite droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, who are always in all the canon episodic movies. They're in every single one, so they are a staple as well, and we come to love them. But we see them and Leia giving them the whole plans to get them to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's going to help them and take it to the rebellion and then stop and blow up the Death Star. That is the main gist of this movie. That's where we're heading. And we start off with that, and we start off with Darth Vader just storming the place and just like holding a guy and choking him to death, trying to find out where everything is. Like, it's just, this is where we see the greatest villain of all time on the film big screen. We see him for the first time here. And this is where you feel the intimidation, and you feel just the presence of Darth Vader and how like bad this guy really is. So we see him like pick up a guy and literally choke him to death, and you're kind of sitting there like, damn, this guy is just crazy. And as we progress throughout this movie, we get introduced to our characters like Princess Leia, and then we get that moment when the droids are down on Tatooine and we meet Luke for the first time, and he's a moisture farmer on Tatooine. We see the dynamic with him and his uncle Owen Lars. Like, we see that and how Owen needs him to stay and do this stuff, but Luke has aspirations. He wants to become a pilot. He wants to do that, and it takes you back to the prequels where Anakin wanted to be a pilot as well. That was his dream, and it's passed on to his son. At this point, we didn't know Luke was related to Darth Vader. We did not know Darth Vader was Anakin. We had no idea about that. And that's why when I recommend people who have never seen Star Wars before to start with this one. Like, if you've seen Star Wars before, then it doesn't really matter what order you watch them in because you've already seen it. So I've already seen it, so I like to watch it from 1, 2, 3, and then go through like the order like that and follow the actual story from start to finish. But if you're new, this is the movie you have to watch first, because this is where you have no idea who Darth Vader really is. You have no idea who Luke is actually related to and what the significance he's going to play moving forward. And this is where we also get introduced to Obi-Wan Kenobi, or better known as Ben Kenobi in this movie. And we find out Obi-Wan knew Luke's father. And at that point in time, we didn't know who Luke's father was. We didn't know he was Anakin. We didn't know he was best friends, like a brother to Obi-Wan Kenobi. We didn't even know what Obi-Wan Kenobi did in the Clone Wars or anything. We just knew he fought in the Clone Wars, and we knew he was a Jedi, but we never had the context to it. So having the prequels gives you that context now. And watching it after watching the prequels is very different to the first time you watch it, because you're discovering things the first time you're watching. You have no idea. And that's why this movie is so effective, is because you're trying to piece things together. And it's only until we get to Empire, which we will discuss in the next retrospective, is when we start to figure out the actual connections and family lineage that is actually tying these characters together, which is fascinating because at the time we had no idea. And that's what this movie does so well, is it disguises who Anakin's father is. It just gives us enough breadcrumbs to try and put things together. And that's why when you get to that final climactic battle with Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, you hear the things where Darth Vader saying to him, like, last time we met, you were the master, but now I'm the master. Like, you had these things and you're trying to piece and you're like, wait a second. So we do know that Obi-Wan did state to Luke that Darth Vader did kill and betrayed his father. So at this point, we're like, okay, so there's some connection there with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke's father, but we never put one and two together to be like, hey, Darth Vader is Luke's father until we get to Empire, where things start to get revealed. So the dynamic is really good in that aspect of showcasing enough breadcrumbs for us to try and put the pieces together. So as we go in through to Tatooine, and like we see that devastating scene of Luke's uncle and aunt dead, like that is brutal. I mean, you just see it and you just see the bones there, and just like, that is the moment where Luke realizes, like, wow, like, he's so upset, but then he's like, there's nothing left here now for me on Tatooine. Like, this was the only thing keeping me here, was my auntie and uncle, and like, now I have to go. Because remember, Obi-Wan offered him and said, you can come to Alderaan with me, but he didn't want to. He said, I need to stay here. But now he has nothing left to live for at Tatooine. So he's ready to go and become a Jedi. And this is where we get introduced to that beautiful scene where they're like, they don't like Luke, and then we get to see Obi-Wan ignite the lightsaber and chop off a guy's arm. So that's all cool. And we get introduced to Han Solo and Chewbacca for the very first time as well. And we really get an idea of what Han Solo is and who he really is. And now having the movie Solo as well to back it up, it kind of gives a bit more context to why he's arrogant and so cocky and stuff like that. Like, it makes sense when you see his past and where he's come from now. And, you know, for a movie that I didn't really think we needed, Solo, it kind of does give a bit more context to Solo as a character, and it does make me like him a lot more. But we see him here, and we see that he's all about money and smuggling, so he wants the money up front because he's in a bit of trouble. So we have that whole moment as well, and then we have the whole, who shot first? Did Han shoot first? Of course Han shot first. I mean, we've seen it in the Solo movie now as well. That confirms that Han shoots first, because he did that in the Solo one, so he did shoot Greedo here first. There's no arguments there. That's a great scene. And then we have the scene that I don't remember was originally in the actual original movie. I think this might have been added. I'm not 100% sure, because it's so hard to find the original copies of the original trilogy. Like, it's so hard because now the special editions have these new effects and stuff like that. And this Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo, Jabba the Hutt looks absolutely horrible. And I don't know if I remember this being in the actual original cut. I'm not 100% sure. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments below. And if you guys are lucky enough to have the original copy, like, that's awesome. Because some of the newer visual effects they added into here don't sit well, and they don't work. And that's a bit of a shame. But this whole scene with Jabba gives us more context to who Han is and what trouble he really is in, then that's why he takes the job. But I wasn't a big fan of the special effects. So we see Luke starting to train on the Millennium Falcon. We see that, and Han already being like, yo, the Force isn't real or anything like that. So we have all that. They get trapped when Alderaan gets destroyed, like Darth Vader and Grand Tarkin just absolutely destroy Alderaan in front of Princess Leia because they want the Rebel base. So we have all that dynamic as well going on with Tarkin and Darth Vader going back and forth. Like, you know, it's so great. Like, Tarkin just does not give a shit who Darth Vader is. He doesn't care. And that's why Palpatine loves him as well, is because he's so, like, him and Darth Vader are, like, very close on the pecking order here. So I love Tarkin in this as well. He's so ruthless, and he just doesn't care. And he just, like, when they're fighting that final battle to blow up the Death Star, and they're like, oh, we can get the pod ready and you can get evacuated. He's just like, evacuate? Are you kidding me? We're about to win. I ain't evacuating. What are you on about? Like, you think they have a chance? Like, he's that confident in what he's got there. And it's awesome. Absolutely awesome. So we see Luke training a bit here. And then we get, obviously, them trapped in there, and they go through the whole sequence of saving Princess Leia on the Death Star, the trash compartment scene as well, which was absolutely jaw-dropping when you first watch it, because you don't know what's going on. You're like, oh my god, are they actually going to kill these characters first? So that was all epic. You have this really interesting creature in there as well. And then you have the whole Obi-Wan doing his stuff, pulling the tractor beam down, and then we get that moment where they have to face off. We see Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan Kenobi. And this isn't the greatest fight. I'll give you that. Like, this isn't the best fight. It's not acrobatic or anything like that. Like, you gotta remember, this movie was made back in 1977. It's not made in the 2000s, 2010s, or the 20s. Like, this movie was never ever gonna have this insane action sequence like Anakin versus Obi-Wan, like Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, that was never gonna happen. So this fight isn't the acrobatic spectacle you're expecting, but it is a decent fight. Like, there's a narrative that is going play here. Obi-Wan's defending, Darth Vader's attacking because, you know, from the past and that. And with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show now as well, it gives a bit more detail to this fight and makes it a bit more important for me, because we see that conflict that they had already where Obi-Wan did best Darth Vader again in that, and still showed that he was above him and that he still had that burden. Darth Vader still had that burden of losing to Obi-Wan again. So you have that dynamic going on as well. And then obviously Obi-Wan sees Luke. And now this is what I love. Like, this is the mind of George Lucas and how freaking brilliant he is. He knows that Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, when Obi-Wan looks at Luke, he realizes, like, Luke's the one that's going to do this. Like, he is the one that's going to beat Darth Vader. And in order for me to make this happen, I must sacrifice myself, become one with the Force, so that I can guide Luke that way. Because I can't beat Darth Vader here one-on-one. It's just impossible now. My age, everything like that is all against me, and Darth Vader is too powerful at this point. So I can't overturn him. I can't beat him. I can't leave here alive. So I have to become one with the Force. And when he does get struck down, Luke sees that and he screams out. And now Obi-Wan can guide him through the Force. It's absolutely spectacular writing. So then they get back to Yavin and they're ready to go. Han is like, I'm out of here. Got my payment. I'm gone. I'm not here to join the rebellion. So he leaves and they all go, and they've got like a 2-meter little cube thing to hit with the torpedoes. And this whole sequence is awesome. Like, it's going through. You got the X-Wings, you got TIE fighters fighting. It's all freaking awesome. Their time's running down. You're like, dude, are they going to do it? Are they going to destroy the Death Star? The Death Star is going to destroy their whole home base. Like, what is going to happen? And as each one falls constantly, Darth Vader gets in his TIE fighter thing and flies down and starts shooting people. And you're like, especially with the prequels, knowing how good Anakin is as a pilot, you're like, bruh, these guys are screwed. They're screwed. And then Luke steps up, and as the other X-Wings are falling behind him, they're just disappearing, and it's him one-on-one with Darth Vader and the other two stormtroopers, and he's about to put up his tracking computer to shoot it. He hears Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this is the moment where you realize, like, this is Obi-Wan's plan the whole time, because if he doesn't die and become one with the Force, how's he going to tell Luke? He has to guide him, he has to mentor him from the Force. And have him doing it here, telling him, trust your feelings, trust me, Luke, believe in the Force. It's just so good. And Luke puts it up, and they're all like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Are you serious? Like, how are you going to do this? And Obi-Wan's telling him, trust. And then out of nowhere, the Millennium Falcon comes and shoots down the other two into Darth Vader, who goes flying out. And then we get that moment where Luke shoots the torpedoes with the Force behind him, blows up the Death Star, and they fly off. And then we get the whole ending ceremony of them receiving the medals. This is just an absolute fan. Like, this is so freaking good, this movie. I struggle to find flaws in this movie. The only flaws I can give it is the time period. Like, obviously, you can see some of the editing and that. You can see the editing where, like, the door shutting and that, like, the cuts and stuff like that. You can see the cuts. Not as clean as they are in today's movies, but that is to be expected. That's something that I can live with and understand. Obviously, the lightsabers aren't quite as crisp as we do have them now, but that's because this was made back in the time. The special effects and stuff like that, like, you have to understand that this is from a time period where they didn't have the technology we have now. And this still has better effects, better visuals, and better practical effects and stuff like that than some movies do today with high budgets. Like, that's how impressive this movie is. And for me, it still holds up. It's got a great story, great characters. It's near perfection. It really is. And we're going to talk about the next movie after, like, the next one in line, Empire Strikes Back, and they just get better and better from here on. So I enjoy this movie so much. This is like, it's just a staple, man. It's just one of those movies that I will cherish and love forever because it's my introduction. It's the movie that got me into movies. Like, this is why I love movies, is because a movie like this. And I have to thank George Lucas for that. The man delivered it. To think we almost didn't get this is insane. So I enjoy this movie so much. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you think of A New Hope? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Smash it down there. Smash that like button for me and click subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace out.